As a lifelong fan of golf, it's my distinct honor to introduce Gary Player. He is truly one of the world's leading sportsmen, and we're very fortunate to have him with us today. But before we turn over the microphone to Gary, I want to thank each of you for being here. Thoroughbred owners often cross paths at major racing events or sales, but this is really the first conference dedicated exclusively to the ownership of thoroughbreds. Thoroughbred ownership is the sole focus. To be honest, from our perspective, this conference is similar to having a first-time starter at the track. You prepare for that race for many months, and you hope for the best, but you really don't know what to expect when the gate opens. So we appreciate your attendance and your support of our first ownership conference, and we hope you'll come back when we do it again. The Owner View initiative, and by extension this conference, are filling a void in our industry. When the Jockey Club commissioned McKinsey and Company to conduct a comprehensive economic study of our sport in 2011, nearly 50% of the owners who surveyed said that they found it very hard to find relevant information when they first became owners. There was no comprehensive information source to assist owners about purchasing horses or finding trainers. There was no gathering place such as this conference. And that's why the Jockey Club and TOBA created Owner View. When we started building the agenda for this conference, we felt like we needed a keynote speaker who had been involved in the sport for a long time and who had achieved significant sporting success. And Gary Player certainly fills that bill. Beyond his extraordinary Hall of Fame golf career, he's been breeding horses for more than 40 years. The Gary Player Stud in South Africa is home to some of South Africa's leading thoroughbreds and is consistently among that country's best breeders. In fact, Gary is the first South African breeder to produce an international Group 1 winner out of a South African mare, and that was Serena, for those of you that remember. And I'm sure there are many more stakes winners on the horizon for Gary. He has a deep appreciation for all things thoroughbred, and knowing his passion, as I've had a chance to meet and get to know him today, he might have been here even if you weren't the keynote speaker. We're immensely grateful to Gary for accepting our invitation, and we look forward to hearing some of his thoughts about thoroughbred breeding, racing, ownership, and his philosophies about his successes in life. Now let's take a look at an amazing journey of Gary Player on our video.
To be a world champion is a dream.
Yes, for Gary Player.
Everybody must have that dream, but too many people just rely on the dream. The dream is not good enough. You've got to fulfill it by hard work and dedication.
I do lots of these.
You've got to do more than the next opponent to fulfill that dream.
I like to do things with speed because we need speed when we play.
All of my friends are my age, most of them are dead. And here I'm at this age, nearly 78, I'm warming up, man.
My life is a miracle. Small in stature, from a small country, to win the Grand Slams of golf and 165 tournaments, and to meet the people I've met, from presidents of the United States to emirs in the Middle East, and to have traveled to the extent that I've had, and the education that I've received, it exceeds anything you can ever get from a Harvard or a Princeton. My goodness me, it's a miracle. We traveled, my wife and I, with 6 children, 40 hours to South Africa to here, stopping 4 times, no disposable diapers, etc., no courtesy cars to meet you at airports and things that are happening today. So it was a very different world.
Be a good boy. See, do your exercises. See your push-ups? You too, Wayne boy.
Many players won in America. They couldn't play worth a damn outside of America. I wanted to win everywhere in the world because that's the ultimate test, to see if you can get off a plane and go and beat people in their home country.
Gary, a versatile golfer, has won tournaments all over the world under all sorts of conditions.
I've probably traveled more miles than any human being that's ever lived. The things that I've learned is to have respect for people's opinions, their religions, their cultures, their ideas, their education, their food, whatever it may be. I believe this was a gift. It was a loan. It was a loan from God. I always knew I was the fittest, and that was a great comforting thought. When I first came to this great country, the United States, I'd already started exercising, because when my brother went to war, he stood there, and vividly I can remember him saying, "Promise me you'll exercise for the rest of your life. You want to be a professional sportsman, you've got to be stronger." When I stood on the tee with Arnold and Jack, I can honestly say that I really believed I was strong as they were. I honestly believed I was going to beat them. I never believed they were going to beat me.
Can you imagine how I feel when I go to the tour, the regular tour, and I go and I see this gymnasium on the tour, and I think, you know, I think I was largely responsible for that, because I started to do all these exercises and do the weights, and it was a no-no. I'm doing a toe raise with my feet. I do a lot of these. I do hundreds of these. Hundreds of those. It's a complete round. Got to learn to create spring in your step. And I just do for the lower back. Keeping your knees bent all the time.
Getting the message through to young people. Get off this obesity kick. This is going to kill this country. Obesity is responsible for more deaths than all the wars of the world put together. And yet it's not taught in the schools.
How are you doing? Fine. I'm so happy to meet you, and you speak so nicely. Come and sit down somewhere. Your body is a holy temple. The most precious thing you have is your health. If you don't have your health, you have nothing. Look at Tiger Woods when he walks on that fairway, what he looks like. Look at Rory McIlroy, what he looks like. You've got to teach yourself to be in great shape. I'm nearly 80. It's like a plank.
And this is what I'm dedicating my life to a large degree. Young people must get fit.
The most important thing in golf is how you start your downswing. Watch the body, watch the hips. See how you rotate them? That's the thing you've got to learn to do. Watch the waist now, guys, watch the waist. Don't touch that, it's very hot, very hot.
I never ever looked at myself and said, my dream is fulfilled.
That's right, Bucko. Well done, man.
The worst word I've ever heard in my life is retire. I look at people at my age, they don't have any desire left, they're rotting away. They're not living, they're existing. You've got to try and keep that young element and that ambition forever. I've achieved an awful lot, but there's an awful lot that I still would like to achieve. You arrive as dust and you go out as dust. So I just hope when I go up there that there's really a good golf course and I can be the head pro there. But I'm not in a hurry to tee off.
Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Gary Player.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a thrill to be here in my favorite part of the United States, one of my favorite places in the world. But it was fascinating for me to sit here today, having been a breeder for 50 years and having met so many people in the industry from different parts of the world, and to hear the opinions about advising people when they get into this great sport. If somebody said to me, would I rather win the Masters or the Kentucky Derby, I'd take the Kentucky Derby. But I have won 3 Masters, so it has an influence. But, you know, standing here is quite fascinating. You sit here and you think what's transpired in this incredible room here, billions, not millions, billions of horses, of sales will take place in this arena here, which is quite amazing. My advice to people who are getting into this business, and we have so many terrific people in the business who will advise you, but is to find someone you can trust. Now, this is being repetitive because it was mentioned today on several occasions. But when people are dealing with money, you've got to be very, very careful and find somebody who doesn't really destroy your desire to be in this business. I think where horses are raised is imperative. On our farm, we have a very big farm, but in the meantime, I'm having to battle against billionaires in the business in South Africa, people who have far more mares than me, far greater sires than I have, and yet we manage to stay in the top 10 almost every year because of the environment that the horse is brought up in, of which I'll explain to you in a little while. My advice, they're talking about $1 million horse. I say, rather buy 5 horses at $200,000 and find yourself partners, because partners, you want to have fun while you're doing it. And if you've got partners, which I've done a lot and had tremendous fun, you can go on holidays together, you can go to races together, and you can play golf together, you can bring your friends to the races and have lunch, you can bring your wife, you can bring your family. It's a great family sport. And then I hear about a man says, would it be better to have a big horse than a small horse? If I'd been sold here, I'd have probably sold for $1,000. But you look at Northern Dancer, who I had the privilege of seeing, who is unquestionably the greatest sire that has ever lived, and I say that without hesitation, versus one of his grandsons, Galileo, who today is recognized as the greatest stallion in the world. But it's an interesting fact. Galileo gets approximately 150 mares a year, and Northern Dancer got a syndicate of 36 horses a year. And you look what Northern Dancer left behind in this particular industry is mind-boggling. It's beyond one's comprehension. It's a thing called it. People say, what is it that makes a champion? What is it that makes a great sire? This is somebody and something that everybody has an opinion on, but I wonder who really knows. I call it a little thing called it. It's a little thing that is loaned to you in professional sport. I know in my case, it's a little thing, it's a gift that was loaned by God. And we all have our God, and that's your opinion to have your God or not, but that's what I believe. It's fascinating today how Governor Jones stood here and he said he had a horse that he didn't even want to put it on the sale, yet went on to win Group 1s and do and excel to a great extent. To me, it's amazing that you hear so many opinions, but honestly and truly, nobody knows about the horse business. And that's the fascination, to listen to people, their opinions. But the fascination, and that's what's encouraging, that a person could go along, as one man said today, you can buy a horse for $1,000, and yet he won a lot of races. And so we want to be involved in a sport that is not only for the wealthy, but where everybody's got a chance. You're involved with nature. I can't think of anything better than in being involved with nature. Waking up in the morning, when I wake up on my farm and I sit on my veranda and I look out as far as I can see, and I don't see a house, a car, a light, a human being. All I just see are wild animals and horses and 124 species of birds. And for me, that just restores my soul. Kids will stay away from trouble. As we know, we face a big problem, particularly in the free world today. Universities, 40% of students who are supposed to be there learning to contribute to the greatest country in the world, the United States, 40% are either on taking drugs or smoking or on alcohol. So we've got to get young people to take a great pride in their country and to study and to work hard. And the horse business is fantastic. You got a daughter or a son and get him involved in business, he is going to stay away from those drugs and the problems that are facing the young people today. We mentioned medicine. There's a tremendous amount. Every blood horse you pick up in every magazine today, you're reading about medicine in the horse business. And I think it should be clarified to a greater extent than it actually is. If you stopped medicine in the horse business, it would come to a grinding halt very, very quickly. As if you stopped medicine with human beings, you would find 100 million people dying very, very soon because the majority of people live on medicine. What we got to clarify, and I am vehemently against this, which I was the first professional golfer to stand up and speak about athletes, 80% of men, women, even young boys and girls today in sports who are using performance-enhancing drugs because of the great rewards that exist. And this is what we must do in the horse business. We've got to say we're vehemently against performance-enhancing drugs to clarify it and make people understand. You know, it's actually a game of contradictions. For everything you tell me in the horse business, for anybody who's the expert in the world that can talk about horses, he can give me an example and I'll give him a contradiction. And I'll come back to the fascination about this game. In South Africa, there was a lady who attended a sale, and she said to her husband, "Isn't that a cute little foal there? Won't you buy this for me?" He says, "It's a dog. I'm not buying it for you." She says, "If you love me, you'll buy this horse." Reluctantly, he buys the horse, and it turns out to win 8 Group 1s and the best sire we've ever had in South Africa, and he would have been #1 on the list in the great country of the United States of America if he'd had the kind of mares that you have in this country. So it gives everybody a chance, which for me is something I'm accustomed to because I'm involved in a sport where everybody has a chance. You know, some people are like horses. They're scared to win. Or not like horses. Some athletes have got tremendous ability. There's a particular golfer, I won't mention his name. He was better than Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus and myself. But he couldn't win. He was scared to win. He didn't like the game. He didn't have the passion. He didn't have the love. And yet he had more talent. So talent is merely just one phase of what is really needed. And there are horses also that are scared to win. You'll find a horse works out fantastic in training. They say this horse is a champion. It gets in and has to compete and bump and get its way through, and it's scared. And so the mind and the will to win is something we don't know if a horse has got it. Isn't it amazing, folks? From 2 little tiny drops of sperm, we get a horse. And that horse develops into a horse from the same mother and the same father and the next offspring and the next offspring. One likes to run in wet. One likes to run in dry. One likes to run on grass. One likes to run on sand. Now, do you think a human being can ever start working out these difficulties and these unknowns? Absolutely unbelievable. We formed in our company 10, I don't want to call them commandments because that's a bit precocious, but 10 rules in life that will help you a lot, and it applies to the horse business. #1, change is the price of survival. We have to change. We're seeing change take place all the time. When I sit here today and I had a horse running, and we found out on an SMS, we said 10,000 miles away to our assistant farm manager, how did the horse do? Psh, back it comes. In the old days when I came to America 50 years ago, I wanted to phone my family. I had to book the call the day before, and I'd get the call the next day. And if the ocean was very rough and bumpy because the cable was under the ocean, you never got the call. Now I phone my farm 3 times a day. Everything in business, number 2. Everything in business is negotiable except quality. And that's what you guys have got to do if you get into the business. Form a syndicate, form a partnership if you can't do it, but buy quality. Number 3, a promise made is a debt incurred. Now, we heard that today with McCarran here. He said once you gave your word, you had to honor it. And that, of course, is very important. Number 4, for all we take in life, we must pay. And we take so much. For example, living in the United States of America, if you wake up every morning, the first thing you should do is kiss the ground. Because when you travel like I have, more than any human being that's ever lived, 62 years of travel, and what these eyes have seen, none of you in this room will ever see a half of what I've seen. And how do you get this through to your youth? I don't know. My personal opinion, 1 year of army training to get away from mom and dad, get away from the entitlement, getting breakfast in bed, sitting there with a computer, get out and get fit and do something for your great country. And that's what I always remember what Kennedy said. It's not what your country can do for you, it's what you can do for your country. Number 5, persistence, and this for me has been a very significant thing in my career. When I couldn't do something, and my brothers told me something as a young man, we went for a run, and after we started running, we got to a mile, I sat down, I said, I can't do it anymore. He said, stand up, and he gave me a kick in my butt, and he says, in sand, he wrote in the sand, C-A-N-T, and he rubbed out the T. And he said, I don't want to ever hear you say you can't do it again. Get up and run. And I got up and ran, and I finished it, and I suddenly realized, he's right. That's absolute hogwash that you can't finish. So number 5 is persistence and common sense are more important than intelligence. Persistence, I found in my 80 years of life almost, is unbelievable. Number 6, and isn't this what your forefathers did in this great country? They got off a boat, they had nothing, and they worked to the bone. The fox fears not the man who boasts by night, but the man who rises early in the morning. The man who stands at the bar saying he's going to shoot the fox in the morning. When the morning comes, he's drunk. Fox doesn't worry about him, but he worries about the man who goes to bed very early. Number 7, and this applied to me, having 22 grandchildren and 6 children. Accept the advice of the man who loves you, though you like it not at present. And this is what's happened to a lot of you. You tell your son something, you tell your daughter something. Dad, you're old-fashioned. Joe Blow told me this thing, and I used to give my one son lessons in golf. And he'd go to he said, Dad, you're old-fashioned. He went to Jack Nicklaus. Jack Nicklaus told him the same thing. It was fine. Number 8. Trust instinct to the end, though you cannot render any reason. Instinct is a very, very special gift. We design golf courses for a living, and we had a big, big deal offered us for $2 million to design a golf course, and my son said, who manages my business, we're not doing it. I said, are you crazy? He says, we're not doing it. I'm telling you, this guy is no good. You'll have problems. I said, okay, you run the business. Well, the man who took the job, I eventually saw him. He was halfway through. He said, the worst thing I ever did. So instinct is a special thing. It teaches you to what I call CTR, choose the right. This is something I try and brainwash my grandchildren, because we all have the temptations and we all succumb to these things. But if you can teach yourself to choose the right, what a great thing. And my great hero, Winston Churchill, who I'll say a bit more about in a while, listen to this carefully. During the war and the difficulties that he went through, can you imagine? It's impossible to imagine. With the Germans about to win the war. Thank God for Roosevelt and Churchill. Number 9. The heights of great men reached and kept were not attained by sudden flight. But while your opponents were sleeping, I am toiling upward in the night. And this is what great businessmen have done. You know, the socialists, the communists want to make everything equal. This man is so rich, I should be taking his money away. This guy is this, we should be taking it away, forgetting how hard those people work to attain that. And really and truly, when you think about it, being small and having to compete against players around the world and beating them in their home backyard, which is tough to do, and traveling with all the time changes and being away from your family. And what I did is I realized my body's a holy temple, and I've got to be stronger and I've got to be fitter than my competitors. I'd go out for a dinner and I'd come back at 11 o'clock and I'd go to the hotel manager and I'd say, please may I have the key for the gym? Sorry, it's closed. Please let me have the key. I promise you I'll close the gym when I'm finished and return it to the front desk. I didn't want to go to the gym. I was tired. I'd been up early in the morning playing and then going to dinner. But I went that extra mile. And that's what we got to instill in young people. And number 10, and this really, for me in the horse business and in business in general and life in general, there's no substitute for personal contact. If you've got a client in the business as a breeder and they win a race, send him a note. I phone people from here all the time around the world, mostly in South Africa. When a horse wins, I phone them and say, well done, how's the horse doing? Because when you come to the sales and you sit here and you as a breeder want to make a success of your farm, these are the people that are buying it. So you better stay in touch with everybody. And what they said in the old days does not apply anymore. The pen is mightier than the sword. Today, it's just an SMS. So easy. An email. That doesn't mean anything. Write that letter in your hand. The other day I wrote a letter to a very wealthy man in South Africa and a breeder, a significant breeder, and he'd supported me at my farm. He'd bought a horse for 3.6 million. He bought another one for $1 million. And I sat down and I wrote a handwritten note thanking him for his support. Well, he told everybody at the sale. He says, you know, that's the first letter I've had written to me in 2 years. He said, I forgot about that. He said, that man made an effort. I'll continue to support him. And so, but today, it's different. You know, I always like to come out here with a little bit of a dance and have a bit of a music, because remember that old song, you got to trouble, don't make it double. Be happy. And to be happy is important. We've got to thank the sponsors for this new endeavor. We appreciate it very much indeed. I'll come back to this great part of the country, as I mentioned, my favorite. And memories are the cushions of life. And the memories I have of this great time, having been here for 50 years, is unbelievable. There was a man called Mr. Bill Young, who was a really true great American, and a man called Mr. Rick Waldman, who's here today. Remind me to give him the guest, Debbie. Who I went to visit them on their farm, and he did a foal share with the best stallion in the world called Stormcat, and I had the mare. And the horse sold in this arena. I think it's been changed since then substantially. But anyway, I sat back in there, and I was playing in the senior tournament at the same time, and I got off. I played in the morning, I came in the afternoon, and my horse came in this arena, and I was sitting next to an old country boy. He had a beard, looked like he hadn't a wash for 5 years, and he had a little spittoon, and he kept going, and he had that red man in his damn jaw. He kept spitting. I kept moving back in case he missed. And the horse came in the ring, and I don't know, they used to have a thing, you'd go, bzzz, bzzz, bzzz. And I said, sir, I just was about to have an operation in my eye, where I was having a new set of eyes put in my head, and so I didn't see too well. I said, is that $30,000, the opening bid? He said, son, that's $300,000. I said, whoa. Well, anyway, Wayne Lucas bought it for $500,000. The next horse that comes in 10 lots later goes for $100,000 by theatrical. I want to tell you, I had a new walk, baby. I had a new walk. I'd already made more money than the leading player of the next 2 weeks. And the other memory, which is so great, I won my first tournament in America in Louisville, Kentucky. And the first prize was $2,800. And I did a score that compares to today's scores, and today they get $1 million. But that's progress. That's wonderful to see that. But at the same time, I came back and played a tournament here, and I won a racehorse. Biggest tragedy that happened in my life. I was so excited with the horse, and I had it in partnership with my manager at that time. And I said to him, I have 7% of a film company of yours. I'll swap this racehorse for your 7%. The racehorse went on to win 4 races. It gave us great pleasure, but the company went on to make tens of millions of dollars. And so that was a bad, bad choice I made. And then I won a senior tournament here, which was really great. And the biggest faux pas I ever made, because I've been married for 57 years to the same woman. And I went into the press afterwards. I was so excited at winning. They asked me why I played so well, and I had a new driver that had just come out by Callaway. And I explained all the great advantages of it. And would I end up with the wrong statement? I said, and if I had to choose between this driver and my wife, I'd miss her. Well, I go to the next tournament, and I walk in the room, and I'm looking for her, and I can't see her, and she's hiding in the cupboard. And I walk around, I walk into the bedroom, and there's the damn driver on the bed with a negligee wrapped around it. True story. But to add insult to injury, she leaves a note. You've chosen your new mate. May you hit it long and straight. Baby, I won't be at the gate. So now, anytime I get a new driver, she says, what's it like? I say, it's lousy. It reminded me of this golfer, Ballesteros. He was in Spain, a very good-looking matador type of guy, very handsome, very charismatic. He was mowing his lawn in the great heat of the Spanish sun. And this lady pulled up, and it was immaculate. And this lady pulled up in a Cadillac, put the window down and said, sir, your lawn is unbelievable. How much do you charge to do this? Madame, I charge nothing, but I get to sleep with the lady of the house. The window went up, psst, the car was gone. But I would like to take this opportunity of saying, I'm a big fan of women. I'm for women making their charge for several reasons. Now, we mentioned the governor today, having traveled from England to be here, and I heard, wow. Well, Mary Ann, I want you to stand up. This is my manager who manages my farm, who we gave a trip. Stand up, Mary Ann. Yeah, she's all the way from South Africa. So that's only 3 times as far as the governor traveled. That was her dream, to come to the United States of America. And I worked for Coca-Cola, who helped us raise our foundation days in the 4 quadrants of the world. And I spoke to the lady president, who's an American in South Africa, about Coca-Cola, and she said their business had improved out of unbelievable proportions since they had hired an increase of women. And Mary Ann has done such a job on my farm. And it's quite interesting how you relate back to ideas. I just read Lee Kuan Yew's book, who I consider one of the 3 best leaders the world's ever had. They have no rapes, they have no drugs, they have no graffiti, they have no guns, they have peace, they have a great economy. Everybody wants to invest there. Everybody's got a job, everybody's got a home, and this was his policy, and carried it out very, very efficiently. And you look at Mrs. Thatcher. What the West, I'm not going to say which country, but the West needs a Mrs. Thatcher today more than ever in the history of our country. What a woman. And I said to her husband, who I frequently had dinner with, I said, Mr. Thatcher, tell me honestly, who wears the pants in your family? He says, she does, but I do the ironing. But I'd just like to tell you that I've often felt, and I heard it come up a few times today, the difficulty that one encounters in the horse business, but that's not that. It's God's plan. God's plan is every one of you in this room and everybody that lives on this earth will have their adversity and their difficulties to encounter. Whether it happens now, whether it's happened, or whether it happens the day before you die, or it happens to where you're going, you will have your turn. I was blessed to have my turn in one way at the age of 8. My mother died of cancer, of breast cancer. That was not an advantage. It was a tragedy. But in a hidden way, it was an asset. My brother Ian went to war to fight with the Americans and the British at the age of 17 from South Africa. And when I thought, and I can see my brother and my mother and father begging him not to go, and he said, I'm going to be with the Americans and the British. And every time one of my grandchildren have reached 17, and I say, is that the age my brother went to war? And my wife and I shudder. My dad worked 10,000 feet underground in a mine in a gold mine, making £100 a month. I went to one of the 5 best schools in the world. I had to travel an hour and a half to school, an hour and a half back. I went to school in a uniform. I had to take my hat off when I saw my teacher. I was not allowed to wear a hat in the classroom. We said a prayer. Irrespective of what your religion is, you could say a prayer to Allah, the Jewish, Christian, but you said a prayer of gratitude. And isn't gratitude something that is an essential ingredient in our lives? We've got so much to be grateful for. And so it's a very, very important word. My sister was at boarding school, so I went to school, got up at 5 o'clock every morning, sat at that streetcar, got in the streetcar, drove into town, walked across town, took a bus, went to school, took part in either debating or physical fitnesses or different sports. We had the best sporting grounds, rugby grounds, cricket grounds, Olympic pool, gymnasiums, debating halls. If you went here today, you wouldn't believe that there's a school like this on the planet. And when you went to school and you went to talk, the recipient who was ever coming to talk, the 2 boys, the head boys of school would meet him, take him to the headmaster, have a cup of tea, and he'd go into the classroom and he'd address 1,600 boys who there could speak 5 languages and know everything about America, and know everything about Russia or everything about China at the age of 15 years of age. So we have this strive and this desire for education because education is the light. So why was the adversity that I faced so good for me, which I thought was so cruel and so tough at the time? Well, I lived in a country, like yours, that practiced apartheid. And when I came over to play around the world for 2 years, these people wanted to kill me every single day. I had 7 policemen sleeping in my room or my house. I had 20 policemen, sometimes 50 policemen, walking around the golf course protecting me. And I told these people, you can kill me. Kill me tomorrow. I'm not going home. Because my father taught me not to believe in that. My father spoke 3 black languages fluently, and some of my dear friends were not white. So I said, you can kill me. I'm not. And I said, in fact, why don't you choose a man here today, send him to South Africa, and I'll meet him, and he can go around South Africa and see if you're demonstrating against the right guy. Well, when I played in the tournament, which was the PGA, which is one of the 4 major championships of the world, think of that, that's equivalent of a Wimbledon or a World Series. I was playing and I lost by 1 shot, and I'd get up to play and they'd throw a telephone book in my back. This was white and black. I'd get on the green, they'd come charging out of the green, charging. I'd get over a putt of importance and they'd roll balls between my legs. I had a putt this long in the 9th hole. They shouted, miss, as I took my putter back. I missed it by that much. And this is what went on. And they threw ice in my eyes, but I lost by 1. And so I was ready. I was ready for that kind of thing. And then I played against Arnold Palmer, the great icon of America. Now, here's this little South African runt coming over here, and he's playing against our icon at Augusta National, the Masters. And I've got 4 shots ahead with 1 round to go. And I'm telling you, there were 20,000 people there, and only 1 person was pulling for me, my wife and my dog back home. And understandably so. Of course they were. But because I'd experienced this difficulty, I said, I love this. They were screaming, as you know, some of you would have seen with Arnold. I said, I love this because I'm going to beat him and show the Americans just how good I am. Whereas I played with other American pros that always used to come with the course, how can you play with Arnie? It's impossible. They're screaming. You can't concentrate. I said, you're a baby. You're a baby. Go back to the grinding wheel. I've got a little verse here that a Jewish man gave me when I was 16. And some of you probably heard of it. It's called Attitude. The longer I live, the more I realize the impact of attitude on life. Attitude to me is more important than facts. It is more important than the past, than education, than money, than circumstances, than failures, than successes, than what other people think or say or do. It is more important than appearance, giftedness, or skill. It will make or break a company, a church, or a home. The remarkable thing is we have the choice every day regarding the attitude we will embrace for that particular day. We cannot change our past.
We cannot change the fact that people will act in a certain way. We cannot change the inevitable. The only thing that we can do is play on the one string we have, and that is our attitude. And this is the punchline. I am convinced that life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react to it. We are in charge. We are of our attitudes. And how many people reverse and say, it's 90% what happens to me, poor old me, it's only happening to me, it's 90%, and it's a measly 10% how they react to it to get over it. People often say to me, how much do you love the horse business? Well, I loved what the governor said, and I endorse it, and that's how I feel. It is a passion that is beyond. I wish I had the vocabulary of a Winston Churchill or a Shakespeare to put it into words, the great love I have because of the association with nature. And learning and reading and seeing things, I came up with my own little thing here to explain, and I said, folks, my passion for horses knows no bounds. I like to feel I'm but one custodian of the thoroughbred industry. The fascination with the connection of golf and horses is the ultimate. Challenges by the dozens. Breeding is one of the refreshing ponderables of the game. You can be right, you can be wrong, but you can never be right, never be certain. It's like a newspaper. If you don't read it, you are uninformed. If you do read it, you're misinformed. We go back to Northern Dancer. Small. I couldn't believe this tiny little horse is the best sire in the world. Then I come and see the best grass, the best dirt horse in America, Mr. Prospector, crooked legs, not very impressive. Then I see my great hero of racing. I got such a thrill today with Mrs. Penny Tweedy, as I knew her, Mrs. Shanery being here today. How dynamic was she at 92? Sharp as a tack, I couldn't believe it. How was her enthusiasm? Is that not one of the great ingredients of life? If you're enthused, people want to be around you. I was always told, and I met Vincent Peale, for those of you that ever knew him in New York, and he said, Gary, you've got to be positive, get away from the negative, and go with the ones that have got enthusiasm. And there she was enjoying this, and even today she walks out at 92 and she's doing this. I'm pleased I wasn't married to that chick. If I came home late, she would have beat the hell out of me. But she has Secretariat, who in my eyes is the greatest horse America's ever had and the greatest horse in the world. But in Britain, they have the horse Franco. They say, oh, best horse that ever lived. But man, you've got to be careful when you say the best that ever lived. Franco was the best grass horse that ever would. But Secretariat would have kicked his butt on dirt in the United States of America. So they are best in their respective surfaces. The conclusion is, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, I've been around the best breeders in the world. I've been in the business for 50 years. We all know a hell of a lot about nothing. My farm manager, this lady, her brother, I'm going to cut the story short, has a dog of a horse, which he's got in training, and the trainer's got a dog of a mare, so to speak. So they take the mare, the trainer, and he gives them the mare, and he takes the racehorse, which never wins another race. They take the mare, and they put it in foal to one, which is our leading sire now, but wasn't then, for about 10 grand. The first baby they sold for 500,000. The second baby they sold for 650,000. And the next baby they'll probably sell for 2 million. And the first one that's going to go on is already won a Group 1 and third in our premier race. If it wins another Group 1, it'll be a sire and probably make 30 million from a horse that was probably worth 10 grand. Now that is what can happen in this business, which should inspire all of you. And then the governor tells us today about this filly Slack Pastons, and it's small and cannot sell it. There you heard it from him. To show you how much we really know, I had a horse on my farm. It wasn't, I was not very patient, and we heard the word come up today, patience. And I thought, well, this doesn't meet my requirements, so I'll give it to a farmer down the road who needs a bit of help. First baby sells, $1 million. Well, the good news about that
is that he's happy, and I'm happy for him, and he'll come back. We've been breeding for 50 years, as I've said, and we've been successful. There's a man in town, Darrell Brown, who I had a horse in South Africa when our Oaks, and I got a phone call. He said, I'd like to buy half of the horse. His name was Serena. We crossed it with Theatrical over here. The offspring ran in the English Derby, second in the St. Leger in Britain, the oldest classic in the world, if I'm not mistaken. Won group races in England, came over here and won a Group 1 race at Saratoga. So, we all need advice to get us on the right road. And I'm very lucky because whenever I want to purchase a stallion, there's one man in the United States I call every time, and his name is Rick Waldman, who handled Northern Dancer, and he hired ran Stormcat, the two best sires in the world at their time. And so Rick, when I phoned him, I said, Rick, I've got this opportunity to buy the stallion. I phoned him 21 times. 20 times he said no, and 20 times he's been right. The one time he said yes, we purchased a horse called Mambo in Seattle, who's a 7/8 brother to Lemon Drop Kid, and he's starting to do very well. So if you need any advice, you remember the name Rick Waldman. We breed very differently to you folks in the United States. On our farm, we have horses in 300-acre paddocks, and a 400-acre paddock, and a 200-acre paddock. Yes, we have them in smaller paddocks as well. But the mares and these foals, they just roam. And they have what we call sweet felt. It's grazing that's full of vitamins, The water comes out of the ground, not city water, and has a pH of 7.8, and it builds bone like an iron. I had a device, and I took horse shin bones from other farms, put them in this device, took a shin bone from my farm. I've lost this thing, unfortunately, with all the development. We pulled the lever down like that. These other bones cracked. It's 9 pounds per square inch, 12 pounds per square inch on my farm, 19 before the bone cracked. Because of the minerals in the ground and the water, our own alfalfa, without a great fertilization, we do some, with our own Timothy Hayes in it to make it simple, and our own oats, and this kind of fresh air, no pollution, and not a lot of noise. So environment is mighty important when buying a horse. You know, when you've got 150 horses, my goodness me, you've got to win to break even because they could eat like hell. And the thing about them, it's nighttime in South Africa now. Every one of them have got their head down and eating. South Africa is quite a force in the racehorse business. Obviously, nothing compares to the United States and Britain and with Maktoum. But it's a very wealthy country with all the world's minerals, the diamond, the gold, the plutonium, the copper, the ore, etc., in the ground. So we have very wealthy people. And our horses have excelled, and we're only just making a move right now, as we should. We had the best grass horse of the year in the United States, Bold Tropic. Horse Chestnut came over here and won a group race immediately. Colorado King won group races. And we're winning in Dubai. We're winning the big Group 1 races in Hong Kong. In Dubai, we've won all the big races. In fact, we had a filly called Ipitombi that was by my stallion. I didn't actually breed it. That won 3 races in Dubai and came over here and won a Group 3, which excelled. And they bought the mare for $100 from Zimbabwe. And it came to South Africa, one of our biggest races, with one of the best trainers in the world from South Africa called Michael de Kock, who now trains for one of the sheikhs. So I tell you, this game will cripple more people than polio. There's a lady in South Africa, Gaynor Rupert. Now, this is a mighty big statement. And she's a very wealthy lady and man. And they have, without a question, the most beautiful stud farm you've ever seen on the planet. I wish you folks could see this. And I got her interested in horses, and today she's got the bug up to here, and it's looking fantastic. And I've got to tell you, talking about stallions and things like that, we're in Hawaii with Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicholson. I've got to watch my time because, man, I can talk like crazy. We're in just tell me what I'm getting. I've not got long. So we're in Hawaii, and CNN come there, and they say to Arnold and Jack and myself, now we're very anxious to know, we've had a request from our public, what you want to do, and if you believe
in reincarnation what you'd like to come back as. So Arnold Palmer says, well, I want this G5. I want to have a big crew. I want to have a bed in my plane and, man, non-stop everywhere I go. Wonderful. He says to Jack, what about, I want a 100-foot boat. I want a big crew, all the fishing gear, beds, and a nice big dining room table because, like Gary, I have 22 grandchildren, and they all like to eat like the Last Supper, so we have a great time. He says, Gary, what about you? Now, here's a city slicker from New York, or wherever he was from. Can you imagine? Knows nothing about horses. I said, actually, I would like to come back as a stallion. He said, what? I said, I would like to come back as a stallion. What are you talking about, Gary? You imagine this city slicker. He said, what are you talking about? I said, well, let me tell you something. If you're a leading stallion, at this time Stormcat was leading. I said, you know, if you come back as a horse like Stormcat, he takes 120 mares a year at $500,000 a pop. He says, what do you mean a pop? I said, well, it has sexual intercourse with a female, and they produce a baby. And he says, they give $500,000 for that? For one? I said, yes, $500,000. And I said, you know, the bad news is they have what they call a teaser. And the stallion is the king. You know, he has all the massages and the best paddocks, and he gets 120 of the best-looking chicks in the country, and they pay you. But I said, there's a teaser who gets the mare ready, and when the mare's ready, in walks the stallion, and he does the job, and they pull the teaser away. I said, that's what I'll probably come back as a damn teaser. But what we've tried to do, which is being done with the influence of American industry, is to breed to Northern Dancer, Mr. Prospector, Bloodline, Seattle Slew, AP Indy, Stormcat, Blushing Groom, Dane Hill, who've all played a vital role in our industry throughout the world, plus Roberto. So you see, we come back to the great Samaritan that Britain and America have been round the world. Who are the first country to be at tsunami? The United States of America with their planes and the food. Who are the people that educate many, not most, but many of the leaders in India and China and Africa and around the world and in Europe today, gone to Princeton, Stanford, Harvard, etc. Who are the people that have given the money to fight AIDS? Who are the people who give money and aid to support people? The United States of America. Folks, they don't appreciate it. I travel around the world. There's some that do appreciate it. And I'm going to give you a big shock now. This was by the philosopher Cicero. And this happened in 55 BC. Think about what I'm saying. That's 2,069 years ago. He says, the budget should be balanced. The treasury should be refilled. Public debt should be reduced. The arrogance of officialdom should be tempered and controlled. And the assistance to foreign lands be curtailed, not stopped, be curtailed, lest Rome will become bankrupt. People must again learn to work instead of living on public assistance. And then in parentheses, he says in the bottom, so evidently, we've learned nothing over the past 2,069 years. And here we are today, debts and things. I can't imagine being involved in two better businesses. They are businesses. They're a sport, they're a game, they're businesses in golf and in horses. I'm so fortunate. The longevity. I won a golf tournament at 63 years of age on the US Tour. Most sportsmen have finished, and athletes when they're 30, 35. I'm able to break my age every time I play. Yesterday at the Augusta National, I shot 73, one of the toughest golf courses in the world. If they're both sports of international, we are in other businesses, real estate, corporate representation, clothing, charity events. We've raised, as a small company, over $50 million around the world for underprivileged children for education. In 4 quadrants of the world, China, the United States, South Africa, and Europe, and the money goes to that particular country wherever the money is derived.
I don't know whether I should be given an applause for that, because when you struggled and you were as poor as I was, I always said, and it was interesting how you're either born with something, it's in the genes. I said, when I'm a champion one day, I didn't think it would be golf, I'm going to help poor people. And I'm going to say this, that Winston Churchill had some remarkable sayings. And often, you know, today there's a fine line between arrogance and cockiness and confidence. And people would say to me, who do you think will win this tournament? I said, I'm going to win it. Next day, cocky, arrogant Gary Player. And if I don't think I'm going to win it, who the hang is going to win it? So, you know, there's a fine line. And Winston Churchill, I loved his line. He said, I've often had to eat my words. But he says, funny enough, I've strived on this particular diet. And I loved that. He also said, which I loved, he said he was having dinner, and this lady turned around and she said, you know, Sir Winston, if I was your wife, I'd poison your coffee. He says, you know, if I was your husband, I'd drink it. And then my favorite one, which I'm sure most of you have heard, she's sitting there with Lady Aston, and she's got her monocle on, and very proper in English. She says, after Winston Churchill, who liked his brandy, and he had a command of the English language that it was above one's comprehension. But anyway, she said, you know, Sir Winston, you're a bore and you're a drunk. She says, you know, he says, you know, Lady Aston, you're ugly. He says, but in the morning, I'll be sober and you'll still be ugly. I turned professional golfer in 1953 when most people in this room were not even born. And I've now traveled more miles than any human being ever. 62 years of travel. My beautiful wife of 57 years, 6 children, 22 grandchildren. I've dined and golfed with most presidents of the United States, with the emirs in the Middle East, with prime ministers, with royal family. What an education. I wasn't able, my father didn't have enough money to send me to university. But I've had the university of the world, an actual experience, which is better than a Harvard degree. I strive to speak well. Athletes are known and renowned as very poor speakers because they don't make an effort. And I want to tell you, that little lady there today, I'm pointing at her right now, that little lady jockey, did you hear the way she spoke today? She stood out. No wonder she's doing so well announcing, but all the guys and everybody spoke very, very well indeed. So, age is a number. I'm as active as 80 now as I was when I was 20. I still do 1,300 sit-ups. I'm going to boast. I'm going to show you the man who's nearly 80. You see that? Hey, hey, hey! And so, age is a number. It's a concept that man devised. You could be 80 years young, or you could be 20 years old. I had a black man that worked with me on a farm in the northern part of our country, never went to school, was one of the 10 most important and best people I ever met in my life. I said to him, Willie, how old are you? I don't know. Spoke broken English. When's your birthday? Oh, every day. Is that a wonderful philosophy? He was never late one day in 40 years, the way he raised his children, the tidiness. And I phone him now, he says, oh, I can't walk. He says, I want to come and work with you. You changed my life. I'm crying and I'm getting choked up there. And he says, I can't walk. Oh, he says, it's terrible to get old, man. Terrible. And my wife is dead, and now I want to come and work, and I can't. He wanted to come and work. And that work ethic is so important in the world today. I want to leave you with a little bit of a prayer that I devised. And it says, help a person when you can. Stop me from grumbling or complaining. I drink from my saucer because my cup runneth over. And that applies to every one of you in this room. And today, we live in a world. When I first came to this great country, there was a praying school. You were proud to talk about God. We were proud to talk about this great country of America. But today there seems to be a shame amongst a lot of people, but not with me.
God bless America. Yes, God bless America. Thank you.